there, people of the internet. Today we're going back to Deception Pass, which I know I was like just there. Well, I guess in YouTube video terms, because it was just like 2 videos ago. So we're gonna go back there and we're going to see what we can see there. So it should be super epic and awesome and cool and all that stuff. Starting off here, we have some black oyster catchers, which are hanging out on a rock that was right next to where the parking lot was. They're kind of hard to miss because of that, which is super cool. And as you can maybe see, if you look hard enough, it's kind of washed out in the camera, but this individual does have a leg band on it, which I think is pretty neat. That's the first banded bird that I have seen. You can't see what number is on it, unfortunately, so I couldn't report it or anything like that, but I still thought that was super cool to see, a banded oyster catcher. But you can see that there were not just oyster catchers hanging out on this rock, there were also a whole bunch of gulls on it, mostly glaucous wing gulls and glaucous wing gull hybrids, it looked like. And then way out there in the ocean amongst all the giant waves, there were a pair of surf scoter that were foraging, as well as a whole bunch of pigeon guillemots. It's kind of crazy to see all these little birds hanging out in these enormous waves, but you know, I guess they're just kind of used to it, because even when it's stormy out, they still gotta feed, I guess. But this was also my first time seeing pigeon guillemots, which was super cool. Speaking of birds enduring stormy weather, here we see some loons enduring the waves as well. We got some red-throated loons back there, and then a common loon that's there in the foreground. Oh, and now we got some more red-throated. There were a lot of red-throated loons. Now, in case you're wondering, if you don't know, these guys are in their non-breeding plumage. When they're in breeding plumage, they do have red throats, if you're confused by the name. Like, there was a couple hundred red-throated loons out there, easily. As you'll see in this flying shot I got here in a second, there were just a lot of red-throated loons. I don't know if that's something that's normal for them, if they just make these giant flocks, or if this spot just had a lot of red-throated loons for some reason. I really don't know, but it was super crazy to see. And here's that flying shot I was talking about. All the loons jumped up in the air and started flying for some reason. But you can see just how many of them there are. And now we see a rock, because I was trying to do a cool shot where like I was on the loons, then we panned through the rock with the seagulls and the oyster catchers, and then we see the loons on the other side. I thought it turned out pretty neat, but we'll cut back to the loons specifically here in a second. There, you can kind of see the loons on the other side. Here we're back to all the loons. It was just this near constant stream of loons, and it just like never stopped. And here we see a common loon that was swimming pretty close to shore, so I was able to get a little bigger in the camera. We can see it is starting to molt into its breeding plumage on its back. It's got some black feathers with some white dots there, which I think was pretty neat. I'm recording this audio right now in May, and I will see some breeding plumage loons later in May, and so I'll definitely show you guys those whenever I get around to catching up to that point. Here we see a pair of pigeon guillemots that were flying out among the giant waves. Here we're a little closer to the pigeon guillemots. The one in the back there is really not in breeding plumage yet. It's still molting, and the one in the front is kind of like halfway through molting. In breeding plumage, they're jet black with a white wing patch that you can kind of see this dude is molting into. Here we see a juvenile gull that I got some footage of because it was hanging out pretty close to me. I'm not too sure what species. I'm pretty sure it's a glaucous wing gull, just because they're our most common gull around here, or possibly a glaucous hybrid, as those are also pretty common around here. And here we see, I'm pretty sure that same pair of surf scoter that we saw earlier, but they came a lot closer to shore, and I decided to get some footage of them as they came up in between dives. I really love the way that male surf scoter look. I mean, just what other bird looks like that? I mean, they're crazy looking and I love them. Then they ended up flying away for some reason. I'm not too sure why, but I got a little bit of that on camera. And I love how when they land, like their wings like lock back for a second. I don't know what that's all about, but it's kind of cool looking. Then when I was done looking at the surf scoter, I decided to go into the woods that are around Deception Pass State Park, and I kind of started meandering around the campsite area. There was no one camping there yet. The campsites weren't open. But then on the top of one of these trees, I saw this bird, and at first I thought it was a purple finch, but I wasn't too sure. It looked a little off to me. This is one of the pictures I took really quickly of it. But then it flew over to another tree and I got another picture of it, and I was still like, is that a purple? That doesn't look like a purple finch. What is that? It was really hard for me to tell, and for some reason red crossbill just didn't click in my brain until I turned a corner and I saw these dudes all on the ground that were just drinking from a little puddle, which was crazy to see. I was not expecting to see red crossbills here at all. They were not a target species I was going to see. I was just wandering around and they showed up, and I was so ecstatic. I've wanted to see crossbills forever, ever since I kind of learned what they were, because they're just such a crazy looking finch with their crossover bill and how they use it to feed on pine cones. What they do is they stick their bill into the creases in the pine cone, and because their bill is crossed, they pry open the pine cones and they use their tongue to get out the seed, which I think is a really crazy cool adaptation. But because these guys are pine cone specialists and pine cones are pretty irregular as a food, these guys don't really have a set range, if that makes sense. They kind of more so just nomadically wander around North America wherever there is good cone crops. And so because of that, you can never be too sure exactly where they'll pop up. But I guess Deception Pass State Park was just where they were hanging out, and it was so awesome to be able to see these guys. Wasn't able to get the best views of them because they were mostly kind of shadowed, backlit's the word, by the lighting in the background, but it was still really cool to see them. There were also some other birds in addition to the crossbills, including this red-breasted sapsucker and this chestnut-backed chickadee. And here we see a couple pine siskin that were hanging up in the alder trees, feeding on the seed cones, whatever those would be called. And then I found a cool mixed flock of birds that was moving through, including this varied thrush right here. Unfortunately, I didn't get any footage of the male that was there, but this one's a female. Here is a red-breasted nuthatch that was in the mixed flock. I don't have a lot of footage of the mixed flock for some reason. I don't really know why, but there was also this Pacific wren here and that golden crowned kinglet back there. There's also a whole bunch of juncos and song sparrows in the mixed flock. A towhee as well, like this dude chilling out on this this branch. And then the chestnut-backed chickadees were also in the mixed flock. And there were also some fox sparrows that were knocking about, like this dude. This is a Scooty fox sparrow. They're kind of our local morph of them, because I know if you go east, they're actually red, which is why they're called fox sparrows, because they're like a red fox. And then here's some better footage of that Pacific wren as it goes about feeding. And you can see a little bit of snow on the ground because we just had some snow. We don't get a lot of snow here in Western Washington ever, but we had just had some snow before I went on this trip. And as you can see, a little bit of it still hadn't melted yet. But then I exited the forest and I went to check out the lake that I saw the buffleheads and the merganser at before last time I went there. And there was this double-crested cormorant that was chilling out in the water. And then way far away on the other side of the lake, I didn't really feel like going over there. I could have, but there was these buffleheads that were hanging out. Not as many buffleheads as last time, but you know, they're still cool to see. I love buffleheads. And then there was also a hooded merganser male. Maybe it's the same hooded merganser that I saw last time. I mean, who knows? That would be kind of cool if it is the same one, but it was several months later. And then there are some Canada geese that were hanging out, and there was also a female ringneck duck that I didn't get any good footage of, unfortunately. And there were some pied-billed grebes that were swimming and diving about the lake as well. But when I got back to the beach, I was in for a real treat because I was greeted by these two, a pair of Harlequin duck. I was so excited to see these guys. I was pretty sure I'd seen a Harlequin last time I went there, but it was a really quick view and I couldn't really tell. But to have these two right next to shore, right in front of me, was just awesome. For obvious reasons, I mean, just look at the male Harlequin right there. I mean, look at that bird. Just look how crazy that thing looks and how just sharp and crisp the white and the navy blue is on it. And then he's also got that weird rusty red color. I mean, they're just such a crazy and awesome looking bird. I'd been really wanting to see one. So see one so close, in addition to seeing the crossbills, just really made this day awesome. There's also a male common goldeneye, which is another lifer for me that was hanging out by the beach with the Harlequins. But the Harlequins definitely overshadowed it though, as far as them getting all of my attention. And I just kind of looked at the goldeneye after the Harlequins kind of flew away a little bit. And then way down the beach, there's also a male red-breasted merganser that I got a little footage of. But after this, I then decided to head out to the Skagit Flats to see if I could find some snow geese. And though I saw some flying, I didn't really find any in the fields. But I did find some swans, like this dude right here. I think that's a trumpeter swan. There was this group of swans that was kind of a mix of trumpeter and tundras. They're kind of hard to tell apart for me around here, because the tundra swans around here don't have the distinctive yellow lores like they do, I know, more in the east. So you kind of have to rely on the facial and feather patterning, which makes them kind of harder to tell apart, unfortunately. And there was also a whole bunch of mallards that were hanging out behind these swans in what I'm pretty sure is a potato field, because the swans, as you can see, were eating from a giant pile of rotting potatoes. In the field that was opposite the swans and the mallards, there was also this huge flock of Wigeon, which, I mean, I love it when I get to see huge masses of animals. I just think huge flocks and herds are always just so cool to watch and to see. But then I started scanning this flock of American Wigeon to see if I could find someone a little bit special in there, not expecting to see them at all. But then I stumbled upon a bird that looked a little different, and it was the thing I was looking for, a Eurasian Wigeon. Now, Eurasian Wigeon are not super rare around here. I mean, I still consider them kind of rare. The Pacific Northwest is definitely kind of their hotspot as far as where they winter in North America, but these guys, if you couldn't tell by their name, are from Eurasia. They breed in Eurasia. As far as I know, they do not breed in North America at all yet. Just some of the ones that breed up in Siberia will come down in North America to winter, but they're still really cool to see, and I was not expecting to see this dude at all. And so I got lots and lots of footage of him and watched him for quite a long time, because that was ever since I learned about Eurasian Wigeon, I was always like, man, how awesome would that be if I got to see one? And then I wasn't even purposely going out to look for a Eurasian Wigeon. I was looking for snow geese. And then I just look at this flock of American Wigeon and there's one in it, and it just was awesome. This birding day is a day that I'm going to remember for a while, because seeing the Harlequin, the Crossbills, and the Eurasian Wigeon all in one day, and I wasn't even purposely going out to find any of them, they just showed up, just made the day awesome. And it's one of the reasons why I love going out and birding and exploring nature and stuff, is you never know what you're gonna find, and a lot of times crazy cool stuff like this will just pop up, and if you hadn't have gone out exploring or looking, you just wouldn't have seen them. But anyways, I'm gonna end the video here, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I'm gonna try to pump out, I got quite a bit of backlog footage that I need to pump out. I'm gonna try to get the videos out kind of soonish, but we'll see as to when I'm actually able to do that. But anyways, I hope you have a good day, and thanks for watching. So I was just leaving, and then I look in the water, I'm like, what is that? That's some kind of bird. It's a hen goldeneye. Now I've seen a male and a female goldeneye. Pretty badass.